honestly. I think most lawyers think that the way they make money is by charging more, working more hours, or like focusing on a specific practice area. But if you look at like billing rates versus geography, like they're pretty static. Like you're not seeing major outliers in a particular city for a particular practice area. So the way you make money as a lawyer is you're more efficient.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Answering Legal Everything Except the Law podcast. I am your host, Nick Worker. If this is your first time tuning in, this is the podcast where we share expert advice on all the parts of running a law firm that attorneys weren't exactly trained for back in law school. Our guest today is Jared Correia. He is the founder and CEO of Red Cave Law Firm Consulting. I am going to struggle through this intro.
Yeah,
but I'll do better later.
You can redo it if you want.
Jared has been advising lawyers for over a decade and can be found sharing his wisdom in a lot of different places, including his Legal Toolkit podcast on the Legal Talk Network. And I'm sure we're going to cover a bunch of the other ones we were just talking about. But Jared, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Me. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Everything except substantive law practice. That's like where I'm at. I like that.
I just want to say thank you specifically right here so that people can acknowledge. I canceled on Jared twice. Once was because I looked like Will Smith in the movie Hitch. My face swelled up. I'm good now. The swelling has gone down. I know it looks maybe as if it hasn't, but it has.
Looks great.
I'm kidding. But I want you to kind of give me, if you could, a background on what you do now and how you got to where you are in terms of like law firm consulting.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And let me thank you as well, because after we rescheduled, you were dealing with my homeschooling issues, but everything seems to be squared away now. So yeah, I practiced law for a little while. So I was on the debate team in college, not to go too far back. And I was an English major, and I graduated from college, and I was like, well, what do I do now? And I was like, law sounds interesting. So I went to law school, and I was like a 2L. And I was like, I don't know if I want to practice law. It doesn't seem all that exciting. And so I went to the career development office at my law school, and they were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think I should try like consulting for lawyers. Like that's an interesting niche that not a lot of people do. And they were like, you should get a real job. So here we are, 20 years later at this point, 15 years later. And I have a consulting business for law firms. And so I practiced law for a little while in small firms to get a handle on like what that was like, just to try it. And then after that, I kind of got lucky. I worked for the State Bar Association in Massachusetts for about a year. And then the state Supreme Court in Massachusetts, which is where I live, started like a free consulting service for lawyers right when the 08-09 recession hit. Everybody was looking for consulting. We were offering it for free. So I just got like a ton of reps. And about 7-8 years into that, I started my own company. And I didn't want to work just in Massachusetts anymore. And I wanted to consult in a different way than I was doing for the nonprofit. So I've since expanded and kind of become like a global consulting business. And I work with attorneys all over the place, both those who pay me directly, and I also outsource consulting services to bar associations as well. So that's in a nutshell the story.
Lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff there. Yeah.
But I love the progression because I think it paints a really good picture of like, even if you're really not where you want to be yet, it's sort of, you kind of just take steps and you just go with the flow. You know what I mean? And,
totally. Like there's a journey to all of it without a doubt.
So, and I say this all the time is, I went to college. I actually never graduated. I probably legitimately have 200 college credits.
I was going to say, I bet you got a ton of credits though. It's like you graduated.
It's based, I'm educated. I just don't have the diploma.
Right. Right.
I don't know if I should be admitting that.
No, that's cool.
Okay.
You're in a safe space for that.
Yeah. Safe space. And so when I was like, I was switching majors actually. I was an accounting major, and I was switching. I was going to, what did I do last? I think I was switching to business or something.
Yeah.
And I got a job here at Answering Legal, and they were just starting up, and I was in sales. Like I was making cold calls in
Yeah.
a tiny office 6 years ago, and then I made salesman. Like a year after I made salesman, they were like, we need to start, marketing our brand. Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
And I was like, sure, I'll do that. So I
I,
ended up like
I
low
got nothing
level.
else going on. Sure.
Yeah, nothing else going on. I'm just writing blog posts and trying to figure out like what does SEO mean,
Right.
and and eventually it took me to where I am today. And now this is not to be braggadocious. It just shows the progression of things. Like I'm the director of marketing here. I have a really small team, but we do a great job. And
You're hosting
I
this
really like what
podcast,
yeah,
right?
I get
I
to do
mean,
I get to talk to interesting people like you on a podcast. I get to write basically for a living, which is really fun.
yep. Yeah.
I work with like my closest friends, and so if it seems like you're kind of on the right path, like every you kind of just progress as long as you work hard, actually. But
Right. Just
that's a
keep
whole different story.
plugging, keep working hard. You'll
A little
figure it
bit of
out.
luck. I like to think I'm lucky / fortunate. I would call myself fortunate, but like sort of right
Yeah.
place, right time type of thing. But
Yep.
I love to hear the progression of people, of how they get to where they are, especially when it seems like we're like, I don't know what I want to do. Sure, I'll go to law school. Sure, I'll practice law. But then you became a consultant, which
Oh,
and you're
right.
successful, obviously. So I think it's cool.
Yeah, I had no clue. I just kind of fell into it, And
Exactly.
everybody's like that coming out of college. Nobody knows what they want to do. Nobody's like, you know what? I'd like to work for a large company in a high rise for the next 40 years. Nobody's thinking about that when they're 21 years old.
And they're
So,
kids. Like we
yeah,
were kids.
right. Even in law school, like a lot of people are like second career lawyers. Like I started law school when I was like 21 years old. Like I had no clue what I was doing. I'll freely admit that.
I know a ton of people, and actually a bunch of our customers. So one of my personal, I would consider him a friend. I don't know if he would consider me a friend, but one of my personal friends who's a customer of ours was a police officer. I think like for the minimum amount of time that you have to be a police officer in order to get your pension. So it was like 20 years.
Yeah, that's
And
how you
then
do it.
yeah, and then he was like, oh, like I know all about this stuff and that. I'm gonna go to law school, and now he's a successful traffic ticket attorney.
Oh,
And
that happens a lot. Like I know a ton of former cops who have become lawyers. That's absolutely a thing.
I'm like, okay, so you were a cop, so you understand like a lot of how that works, and then you had a
Yep.
leg up going into law school, and
Hmm.
and listen, maybe I'll do that. Maybe like when I'm 40, I'll go to law school and
Don't do
who
it.
knows. Um, so you and I kind of have a similar following. Like our following is kind of made up of solo and small firm attorneys.
Right.
Obviously, because the nature of consulting is the people who need the most help are the people who feel like they have to do everything themselves. So I'm sure
Right. And
we're
once
gonna
you get big enough in a law firm, like they have their own consultants.
yeah,
So it's not
and then
really
you
a
bring
need.
it in house, and it's like, oh, we have business managers and COOs and stuff like that. But
Right.
when you're just starting out, you need someone like you to do consulting. So a lot of the I would say most of the population has been forced to work remotely for a significant portion of this year, 2020.
Right.
What's been your advice to attorneys and smaller firms on how to be successful while working from home?
Well, it's funny. Like my wife works at a law firm in Boston, and I had a home office here, and I was working from home by myself for years. And all of a sudden, everybody's here all the time. And I knew that my life was truly disrupted when my wife bought a giant printer, which I'm looking at right now, and put it on the desk. I'm like, that's how I know you work at a big law firm.
That's lawyer stuff. We need
It
paper.
totally is.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is happening right now? This is like taking up half the desk. But I think a lot of lawyers have that same issue where it's like, what do I do now? I've seen lawyers who buy the printer. I've seen lawyers who are like, they don't have cloud-based software. So they're at home, like sending emails on a different account. And then when they go back into the office to like the desktop computer they're using, they spend all day like forwarding emails to themselves. It's crazy. So I think for a lot of lawyers, this was like a massive jump in technology, like light speed. But generally speaking, I've been telling people like, um, do you have analog processes or do you have digital processes? And where you have digital processes, like continue to build those out. Where those processes are analog, like referral networks that are just people that you talk to, people who come into the office for intakes? Are you taking checks? Are you having people sign documents? Like, that doesn't work anymore. So I've been telling lawyers, like, digitize everything you can as quickly as you can, because even if like we go back to some level of normalcy, let's hope, right? Let's hope people aren't living in their homes separately from society for the rest of our lives. You want to have that option, because not everybody's going to want to come to your office space in New York City or Boston or wherever.
To get back into it, what you were saying is when you spoke to lawyers who are working from home, you're talking about, are you analog, are you digital?
Right.
For transitioning to digital, right?
Right.
So what should law firms, small law firms, solo and decent sized firms, what should they be using as far as technology? Not only for like their practice management, but for sort of like client intake. And also I do want to kind of cover this because you mentioned checks, like paper checks.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so like
That's still a
payment
thing.
management too. Yeah, listen, I still have paper checks somewhere. I don't
I
know
have I
where.
have paper checks as well. When do I
Somewhere.
use them? 2006. Yeah, it's really funny because when analog, I think is the right word, because when you look at most law firms, most small law firms, they're kind of like Walkman, right? Now you got to like ramp up from that to something else. Um, the thing is, what you want to do is take a look at all your processes, and if it involves like an in-person transaction of some kind, figure out what the equivalent is to a digital transaction. And that could cover a number of different things, right? So you talked about like managing the practice. So case management software is very popular for lawyers, productivity software as well. And what those things do for you is they don't necessarily replace processes, but they guide processes. And they also free you up in terms of time spent, right? So if you're using like a Clio or a MyCase or a Rocket Matter or one of the case management softwares in conjunction with like Outlook for email and calendar, or Google for email and calendar, as well as like an accounting software like QuickBooks or Xero, you can apply workflows to your systems so that everybody knows how to approach a case in the same way. There's consistency for the people who work for you. There's consistency with what you do. There's consistency for the client. You're reducing malpractice. You're operating at a faster clip. And then because you have all these systems in place that you could look at data on at any given point, well, now you've got the ability to have fewer meetings because you can know the status of a case just by clicking on it. Man, when I worked at law firms, we would have, and this is one of the reasons I stopped working at law firms, Saturday morning, we would go in and have like a case brief. And literally, we would bring the boxes into the conference room and look at like every single case we had. And I said to myself, this is awful. Like, why do I want to spend my weekends like this? There's got to be a better way to do this. And clearly there was. The other thing that you talked about, like payments, right? What does intake look like now? And this was already changing pre-pandemic, but what are the digital processes you can leverage there? So we're on a Zoom call right now. You don't have to have client meetings anymore. You don't have to have initial intake meetings in person any longer. You can use Zoom or any number of other products. You got Microsoft Teams, you got Wire, you've got Signal. There are untold numbers of video conferencing tools you can use. And then the same thing for paper signatures, right? You don't need to do that anymore either. And people act like this is a new thing, but the e-sign act was passed by the federal government 20 years ago, which basically said that wet signatures were just the same as digital signatures. And it's taken attorneys a long time to adopt that. So HelloSign, Adobe Sign, DocuSign, those are all e-signature platforms that people could use like tomorrow. Super easy to use. Electronic payments for law firms, right? Like, you don't want somebody like going to get you a check because that's like an 18-step process. It takes a long time and they have to have the money in their account. And then now you're getting smaller retainers. You have to collect more regularly. So let them pay by credit cards. You pay a processing fee, but you get paid more and you get paid quicker. And then you eliminate I got to go to the bank. I got to get a cashier's check. I got to bring it back home. I got to put an envelope. I got to put a stamp on it. I got to mail it to the lawyer's office. Not even to mention what happens when it gets to the lawyer's office and how many steps you take after that. So that's the process I talk to law firms about going through all the time. Like, look at every aspect of your of what you do in a given day, figure out what the tasks are, and then automate as many of them as you can.
I think about this stuff on a daily basis, but for whatever reason, when you were just talking right now and you were saying how automated you can really get, but not automated, how much more efficient you can get just by,
Yeah,
you don't even have to automate anything,
right.
like
Yeah.
you
Well, yeah,
you
but even before automation, like that's a good point. Like,
exactly. You don't
get your personal efficiency in place first and then
I
automate.
can't even. So first of all, I am a proud uh former owner of a Walkman. I'm
Me
like
too. Me
I'm
too.
probably
I'm
the
not trashing
last.
Walkman at all.
I'm probably yeah. I'm probably the last year where I had a where like me and my friends had Walkman before like CD players, like the
Yes.
CD ones,
Yep.
which anti-skip, come on, that never worked. And then
That was definitely not a thing.
that
That was
didn't
a
work.
marketing ploy.
Yeah, anti-skip my butt. Uh
Cassette tapes never skipped. I'm just going to throw that out there.
exactly. But they did light on fire.
That's true.
But so I'm listening to you name all these things and I'm thinking to myself, because I don't even think about this. I only use paper in like the sticky note sense. Like I have
Yeah.
notes everywhere on my desk. You can't see it because I cleaned up before the podcast, but there's notes like all over here, right?
Yeah.
If I need a document or anything, I have an entire CRM and I can, if I don't even remember what it's called, right? So say like I can't even imagine being a lawyer, right? And you have years and years and years of files and somebody, and you need to go through and find one thing. And you got to go like alphabetically through paper. Like that's got to take so unbelievably long compared to if I have a, if I have any notion or semblance of what that document is, if I remember title, if I remember that
Right.
I have to look up Jared and I don't remember how to spell your last name, right?
Right. And why would you?
I could just type Jared into like my Google Drive and something about you will pop up inevitably. It just makes searching for documents so much easier. I can't even imagine being a lawyer and like moving all my files into like Clio, right? And just being able to type and find documents that way. And if you want to print them,
Yeah.
go ahead, just
Yeah. Print
shred
away.
them afterwards. But just the amount of time that like cashing checks would take, or going to the bank, or especially cash, like checks. If you get a check now, you can take a picture of it. If there's no,
Well, yeah, mobile deposit helps a lot,
yeah,
but it
but
doesn't help your
still,
client
not
who's
for the
getting
client
the check to
exactly.
you. Yeah. Right.
If you only accepted check, I would have to find my checkbook, and by find my checkbook, I mean my wife would have to find my checkbook. Um,
And lawyers aren't going to take regular checks. They're going to make you go to the bank and get a
yeah, forget
cashier's
it.
check,
Yeah,
which
I
is like a
wouldn't take a
whole other
regular check either.
process
I
unto
wouldn't.
itself.
I'm not trusting
Yeah.
a regular check. Come on, it's 2020.
No,
But
but you're so right about this because like part of this is also like the antecedents to being able to do this. So you talked about two of them, like getting paperless, right?
how much more stuff can you do if you just go paperless in that sense? And then you take it as far as, well, you could really leverage this technology to do things for you, and especially when it comes to like marketing automation, right? You can help
Right.
get more clients, or automating your intake process, and making sure that you're giving yourself more of an opportunity to capture and convert new leads.
Mm,
But
yeah.
if you're saving all this time and getting more, it adds up to more revenue at the end of the day, and having to work
Well,
not
revenue
as
is the
hard.
thing. Honestly, I think most lawyers think that the way they make money is by charging more, working more hours, or like focusing on a specific practice area. But if you look at like billing rates versus geography, like they're pretty static. Like you're not seeing major outliers in a particular city for a particular practice area. So the way you make money as a lawyer is you're more efficient. And I thought it was really interesting. Last year, like Clio came out with their legal trends report, the 2019 version. And there was a stat in there that said like the average lawyer utilization rate is 28%. So of a given set of hours during the day, how many do you bill? So the law firm average is like 2.5 hours out of 8, which is fairly low. And the study went on to show that like if you could get 3 to 5% higher in terms of your utilization rate, you can double your revenue every 5 years. And if you're 3 to 5% lower, you lose half your revenue every 5 years. So that's a very telling stat that shows me that if you're faster than your competition, you're going to make a whole hell of a lot more money than they do.
I'm not even gonna perseverate on that because I already am. I don't know why. When you were just explaining what you could, I'm thinking about the time spent in my head, and
Yeah.
and the first thing that comes to mind is like I would go fishing. I just like you know what I mean? Like if I'm gonna make the same amount of money
Well, that's
in
the thing. You
75%
don't
of
have
the
to
time,
work more
you don't have
necessarily.
to. You can
Yeah.
do. I had a big name attorney on the podcast, and he was talking about like knowing your numbers and making this and saving time and and he's like,
Yeah.
and we use this as the intro is once you have all that time, like some people want to work more, some people want to get more cases, some people want to go do whatever they want to do. The beautiful thing is you get to pick.
Yep.
And
Yep. Flexibility.
I'm thinking in my head, that's what I would go do. I'm gonna go fish for striped bass. That's what I want to do.
Or you could just stay home and manage a remote learning academy. There's
Yep.
many choices.
Google Classroom or whatever. You
Google
could
Classroom, whatever.
you could
Right.
invent a better and all one-stop shop.
Right. Build your own system. No, but you're totally right. The point is that, like, I think if you look at lawyers generally, they'll tell you like the number one thing they want is more revenue. And that makes sense, but like they have very little notion of what that goal is, right? They just want more revenue and that's it. They don't want to make like 20% more this year. So they have a hard time meeting those goals. And I think that most of the lawyers you'd ask who want more revenue, they want more revenue because they're struggling to make ends meet. And those lawyers who have kind of figured it out, they're at a point where they've got a revenue model that works for them. And then when they get to that point, they don't necessarily want to make just more money. They want to be able to do more things. And I see that happening consistently. So I think you're spot on as far as that's concerned.
I think if I ever got to the point where I'm like, I don't need any more money, that's what I would do too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to have the choice, right?
Yeah. Maybe someday. But so because you probably deal with this on a day-to-day basis, is advising lawyers to go and get these technologies and start implementing them in their practices. So are you seeing a trend in law firms actually using these technologies more due to the pandemic? Because I think over the last 5 years, I've seen it sort of explode. I remember when Clio, I remember when I used to be able to talk seriously to the CEO of Clio on the phone. I once like had a meeting with him. I'm not that important. And now
he's a good guy. He'd probably talk with you.
Maybe he is a good guy. He was very nice, but I'm saying like he's so important now. So I've seen it explode, but I'm curious based on the people that you talk to, are you seeing the same sort of thing happening across all types of law firm technology?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And so I have a very specific answer to that because I've been thinking about this myself a little bit. Partly because, like, if you've noticed in the news, there's been like a number of big equity deals recently where some of these long-standing companies like Rocket Matter, for example, recently just got bought by an equity group out of New York City. And I would not have anticipated that, right? I think that has something to do with the pandemic, but that stuff is now happening. So I started consulting in 08, 09, as I mentioned. And at that point, that's when lawyers were like, maybe we should start thinking about this whole internet thing. And they started using the cloud and they adopted law practice management software like Clio. And they did that for a long time. And then everybody was like, lawyers are buying law practice management software. Let's build a ton of those. So for like a decade, there are like 200 case management software. It's just proliferating. Now, I kind of view this as like the second wave of legal technology adoption. And I see two things happening. One is that lawyers are starting to adopt more technology. And the second thing is that there's going to be more technology built for lawyers. You see a lot of investment money coming into legal tech right now. You see a lot of people doing some interesting things. And you also see a lot of like coalescence around marketing and technology. So you see a lot more marketing tools in legal. Like there's like basically 2 CRM products in the legal industry, which is insane. There should be a Salesforce for legal. There isn't. So there's a ton of room in this marketplace. So I think what you're going to see, second wave of legal tech, is lawyers adopting more cloud products outside of the traditional productivity and case management realm. And that's going to be the next thing that happens. So the answer is yes, in a very specific way.
I would be willing to bet money that Salesforce enters the legal market in the next 3 years.
I could see that. Yeah, I'm sure they're already making inroads into doing
I'm
so.
sure.
Yeah, there's just, well, that's the other piece that I didn't talk about, which is like, if you've got an appropriately motivated large company that wants to really put a focus on legal, they could do some damage also.
So I know I have my own personal choices when it comes to lawyer tech.
Yeah.
And it's, in my opinion, it's super unbiased because I don't actually use any of it. It's just based on feedback that I've gotten from, friends I have in the industry who use that stuff / the actual people I've spoken to in these organizations. So if you talk to me on a phone call and I can get a feel for how you guys operate as a company and how you treat your customers, I sort of make a judgment on that. But if you had to put together a list of like the essentials as far as technologies that lawyers should be using, you don't have to name names specifically.
I'm clearly comfortable naming names.
Well,
but
yeah, then
I can talk
listen,
about technology types.
we can
as well.
blow. I had I'm going to call him out. I had my friend Stephen Long on the podcast like a month and a half ago, and I know this guy. I know that he's a little outspoken, and I love outspoken. I'm outspoken.
Yeah.
And he got on, and one of the first things he does is just calls out Avo. He's like, Avo, sorry guys, you got de-indexed. Sorry, you call me, you keep raising your rates, but you're not ranking for anything. I'm like,
yeah, the transition to internet brands was a little bit rough for sure. They're making a little comeback for now, but
so I'm no stranger to naming names. I haven't been canceled yet by Avo.
just wait.
Listen,
I think we'll both be canceled. Us and Stephen Long. I feel like we're all going to be
Steven.
canceled by
Hey,
Avo
Steven,
after
the
this
three of us
podcast.
are going to have like a support group when we get canceled by them. So
That's all right. We can set that up.
well, yeah, we got Zoom.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you're talking like baseline technology package for like a small firm to get them modernized, right?
Yeah.
I think it's got to be like the big three are cloud-based case management, cloud-based accounting, cloud-based productivity software. And usually that's like, we talked about them all already, right? Like Microsoft, Google. Very few people are using like freeware for productivity software at this point. Lawyers like Microsoft Word. They like WordPerfect better, but they just, it's not really terribly viable these days. And then, as I said, you got like tons and tons of case management software that you can choose from. And then Xero and QuickBooks are like the two big accounting softwares that lawyers use. I like to see lawyers also using internal communication platforms for their team, like Slack or Microsoft Teams. I think that's helpful because that frees up your inbox to be more of a mission critical inbox where you can handle substantive questions that clients have, right? I like to see lawyers also using some technology for marketing because the deal is like, you got to be able to convert clients. And the first step in converting clients is to engage them where you don't have to personally engage them. So chat, scheduling tools, virtual receptionists, those are essential, I think, to modern lawyers. And very few lawyers have their intake set up in that way. And then we already talked about like the ability to do online meetings, the ability to take electronic payments, and the ability to do electronic signatures. If you've got like those, 10 softwares in place, you're like light years ahead of the vast majority of law firms in the country and in the world, frankly.
And to me, the most important thing is like people hear 10 softwares. They're like, whoa, this guy's nuts.
Yeah.
10 softwares.
And that would be true, but yes.
Well, I mean, yeah, but not in that way. But some of them, so you got to understand, is Slack free? Slack is free, right?
Yeah.
unless you get past a certain amount of people in an organization or in a Slack channel, slightly scary.
Yeah, users, and then just like if you want access to like archived content, like they just
Yeah.
don't allow you. Yeah, but yeah,
So
free to start
some of
with.
the stuff that we're talking about here is at zero cost to you, besides
Exactly.
like your internet bill.
And the rest is like super cheap.
Super, super cheap. I think if you have a small firm, you can get away with like Clio or Practice Panther or something like that
Yeah,
for like
Practice Panther is another
what,
one I
$50
didn't
a
mention.
month, maybe
Oh
100
yeah,
if you have too many users.
40 to 70. Yeah, to start
And
with per license.
and your productivity is going to help you make that money back so quickly. And if I think of it this way, like, yeah, you might save a few $100s a month by not investing in that stuff, but isn't your productivity at least worth the try? Right? Like,
Right,
right.
right. Everything I talked about, honestly, less than $500 a month, probably less than $300 a month. And the interesting thing is, if you asked me this question in 2008 when I first started consulting, I'd be like, all right, you got like $40,000 because a lot of those options were just like premise based and some of those didn't exist.
Well, you used to need like specific phones to make conference calls back in the day. Like the hardware was just
Right,
more expensive. Everything
right.
now has been made a lot easier. I'm sure it's going to even get easier as
Mm,
time goes on, but right now is I feel like the barrier to entry and all that stuff is just super low.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
and I talk about this all the time. Like it's people are like, well, why would I do something with a law firm now? Why would I start a law firm during what's happening now? And I would tell you, like, there's really not a better time to do it, frankly.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think like I think part of it's so funny to me because it's like, well, why would I do it now? Why would I do it now? There's really like no need for an investment.
Right.
We're all doing this from home right now. It's not like we need like legitimate office spaces. And
Right.
and you know what I think about is every time I want to try something new. So like I'll give you a good example is I think like 2 or 3 years ago I had never had a live chat on my website. I
Oh
have
yeah, yeah.
I have a call center staffed, and this is not with more than 100 agents.
Right.
Sometimes more on at at one time, and I didn't have live chat on my website, so I wanted to try it out, and I swear myself up until like recently I was the live chat guy. If you went on my website and you went into the live chat, there's a picture of
That
me.
was you. You're a live
It's
chat
me.
guy. Yeah.
I swear.
You're
And
like you're like the male version of like Flo from Progressive, right? That's what this has become.
oh yeah, exactly. I'm the face of Answering Legal, baby. All right.
Right.
I just need get me like the progressive apron. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you
I
just
need
need
like
your
one of
own apron.
yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody get me my apron, and my red lipstick. Actually, Flo and I attended the same university,
No, really? What university is that? I don't know what
Binghamton
university she's
University.
in.
There's a
Oh, Binghamton.
very
All right.
big picture of Flo hanging in like a lecture hall. I think it is the lecture hall, the main lecture hall. But
No
I
way,
remember seeing
really?
that and being
Oh,
like,
that's
oh
funny.
yeah, like thank God she got an education to go do that. Um,
I was
but
gonna say like there's I was gonna say Rumble Ponies, right? But that's the minor league baseball team in
yeah,
Binghamton.
that's the
That's not the
Bing.
college affiliation.
I
Yeah.
think they're not the Rumble Ponies anymore. I think they switched the name, and it's something equally as ridiculous. But
I
I
love
don't know what it
ridiculous
is.
minor league baseball names,
But
by the way.
they were the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. But so what I was gonna say is like I told you this before. Like we used to not be as big of a company,
Yeah.
and I think the chat costed maybe like $50 a month, and we were like, I don't know if we can justify that with the marketing budget.
Right.
We're still we're still building something here.
Yeah.
So there's free trials. Like,
There are.
you can't
Yes.
go to any. I charge you to find a company offering you a cloud-based solution without a free trial. I charge you
Yeah.
to find one for me, and if you can, I'd be interested to see that they won't give you a 30-day guaranteed money back if you don't like it.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah. You're
So
totally right on that. I'll do
try
some
it.
research for you. I'll see what
Just
kind of time I
try
can
it.
put aside this weekend. Yeah.
I don't even think I think I personally I don't need a bar number, nothing like that. I could put in my email address and I can go use Clio for myself
Right.
right now.
Right.
I bet.
Yeah. Oh, you
I don't
totally
even have
could.
to like look that up.
We don't
Uh,
even need to bet on that. You totally could do
yeah.
it. Now,
So
and this is a good point you make too, like sandboxing things, testing them out, running demos. That's all important. And people ignore that as well in legal.
and it helps you. And this is something that we pitch here all the time, right? Is
Mm.
so we offer a free trial.
Yep.
Right now, we extended our free trial. We're giving everybody 200 minutes to use. It's for a
Oh,
limited time. So if
yeah,
you're
that's a
watching
good
this
deal.
and you
Check it
call,
out.
it's a
Check it out.
limited time. Okay.
It's a perfect testing option, right? 200 minutes. That's
Right.
a lot of minutes.
Self promotion here. Here we go.
Hey, I'm
Uh,
helping out with that. I think that's a great deal, honestly.
yeah, but so what we tell people is sure you may have never used a virtual receptionist solution before in your life. You don't know how you want it set up. You don't know if you want me to answer the calls only that you miss. You don't know if you want me to be the first point of contact. You don't know what type of messages you want, what type of questions you want me to ask. Fine. Let's figure it out.
Right.
Let's figure it
Exactly.
out while
Yeah.
it's free. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and you have all this time to get these things set up. So if you're like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to use Clio, I got to get my staff trained on it. There's a grace period where at no cost to you, you can sort of get the learning curve over with.
Right. Use it as a sandbox. And the part of it too is that like even though there is like always a productivity downturn when you add new software, the productivity upturn afterwards is just massive. So the investment is worth it. But law firms just don't invest time typically like that, unfortunately.
So I want to get back to like the trends that you're seeing, and I want
Yeah.
to ask you about the future actually. So
Ah, yes. Let's
so
prognosticate.
let's do it. So what long-term effects do you believe that the way this year affected lawyers and technology will have in the future? So everybody got caught up this year, right? Where do
Yes.
you sort of
It's been a
see
it's been a great year.
uh, in some
Really
senses
enjoyable pandemic.
in some senses maybe. I'll give you a
Right.
maybe there. But
Right.
where do you see small law firms using technology going in the future? Where do you see this progressing to?
I hope this speeds things up. So I was talking about this the other day, and like I think like when you look at the way lawyers manage their businesses, they're just reactive all the time. Literally, all they do is come in and they put out fires. Um, I am hoping that this becomes such a massive reaction and overcorrection in terms of technology that law firms should have drafted before and utilized before, that they're now going to get proactive moving forward. So I am hopeful that this is just the first stage of law firms adopting new technology in their practices that they haven't utilized before. So basically, like what I would hope is that if this is really the second wave or the second decade of legal technology adoption in the cloud by law firms, that now we start to see them move off of the traditional productivity software, case management software, accounting software approach, and start to really look at different technologies that could be helpful for them. And that's, I say I hope, but I also think that that's what's going to happen. And I think a lot of that's going to be grounded in marketing technology. So I think if we look at like the next 10 years, you're going to see a lot of law firms bringing in marketing technology solutions and also hopefully at the same time refining their processes and workflows.
Shout out to my friends at Lawlytics and Litify,
Yeah.
because I don't know how big these guys are. They're good people. They have
Yeah.
successful businesses, but
Yeah.
I don't pry, and personally, I don't really care that much.
Yeah.
But I wonder how big they are now, because I
I can
agree with
tell
you.
you they're going to be bigger.
I think so, because giving someone, and think of like, I think of in this sense, I think of WordPress, right? Where years
Yeah.
ago it was like, I can't make a website for my business. That's going to cost me too much money, and this, that. And now WordPress has made it
Right.
like, or what's the other one? Wix
Wix. Yeah.
or Weebly or whatever they're called. They're literally
Squarespace.
drag and drop
Right.
and upload a picture, and you can get free stock images online, and you can make I personally can make a beautiful website.
Right.
That is
Right.
not what I do.
So much easier to do now. Yeah.
I am not the art guy. I couldn't draw a stick figure that would nothing. And so if you can help lawyers by showing them best practices and giving them the tools in order to make the best websites with templates, you know,
Yeah.
and just do what
Yeah.
works.
Hmm.
I think that's going to explode. Um,
Oh, totally. Yeah, I and the Lawlytics model is very similar to that, and there are a few companies that do that same thing as well. So I think you're right. Yeah, I think like websites, marketing technology, that's the next thing.
I I could, when you said marketing technology, I was like, it's going to be the next big thing, because and there's always going to be a need for marketing firms. There's always going to
Right.
be a need for internal
Oh yeah,
marketers
I
too.
don't disagree with that. Yeah.
And so like I was the in-house SEO guy here for a while, and
Mm.
I was
You're busy, I'm sure.
yeah, I'll never hire an outside firm to do anything for me. I brought it in-house. I do all this stuff myself, but it gets to a point where you get so big, you know.
Right.
So you could start that way,
Right.
but you get so big that if you want to get bigger, you need more manpower.
Totally.
But
Yes.
if you want to start out and do it yourself and save the money, and you have the technology in order to help you save time and be more productive, that
Mm.
by all means, you know, you're smart people, you're lawyers,
Right.
you're highly educated, like you could figure it out. Trust me, I
Right. Right.
believe
Right.
in you. You can figure it out if you have the technology. Um, but I do want to ask you, because I think this is going to be interesting.
Hmm.
Have there been any trends that you've seen over the past 7 months that have really surprised you?
So me, have they surprised me? I would say no, honestly. And I'll tell you why. I get a lot of lawyers who are like, "Hey, you've been telling me to do this stuff for like 12 years, right? And now I'm starting to do it." So I would say that like I've been in the game long enough that like very, very few things that lawyers do surprise me. So
Okay.
nobody's going to say, "Hey, I'm doing this." And I'm not usually going to answer, "Oh, I've never heard of that before." I will say that like it's always a pleasant surprise to me when lawyers adopt new things, but it's not like a new tactic that I'm seeing. So I will say two things. One thing that I'm really happy about is that I see a lot more lawyers at least looking at alternative fee arrangements. So you see a lot of lawyers now who are looking at subscription fees very closely, which I think is a really interesting model for law firms. You see a lot of law firms now looking at productizing their services, which is a new and different thing that they never would have considered before. I think that's all good. And then the other piece of it is that I see lawyers now having more of a willingness to adopt workflows than I ever have before. And the argument that I had from lawyers previously on that was always like, well, I don't want to run a factory law firm, right? I don't want to be just like having these processes in place and I don't get to like think about the law, because lawyers like to believe they're in this like white tower. They don't have to make money. They just get to do interesting things all day. But that's not how businesses work, right? The more product you can crank out, the more successful you'll be, generally speaking. And that works in law too. So while it's not shocking to me, or these are like surprising developments to me, I am glad to see more of a willingness on the part of lawyers to look at alternative fees and to also look at workflows more closely. And I think that can only be a good thing moving forward. And hopefully that's supplemented by the technology they start to adopt.
I love having people like you on the podcast, because our main focus as sort of you're a consultant in like the practice management of the entire firm.
Yeah.
What my job
Yes.
is to make sure that the communication between
Right.
lawyers and their
Right.
customers is working smoothly.
Hmm.
But if you boil that down, we're both really, really concerned with lawyers' bottom lines, right? So it sounds like we're
Totally.
like
Yeah.
money, 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 money. But the
Which is sort of true. No.
it is sort of true. Listen, I want everybody to be profitable. I want everybody to be successful.
Yes.
You invested a lot of time in yourself and in your education, and I believe that the practice of law should reap you some monetary rewards. Sure.
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, the more efficient you become, the more you can help people. You can help
Hmm.
more people by
Yep.
providing better service, better communication. You can provide better experiences. You know, that's all the stuff
Yeah.
that we're concerned with here. So it sounds
It's a
like,
great way to look at it for sure.
and people will be like, oh, like all you want to do is just answer my phones and take my money. And it's like, it's really not true. What I really want to do
Right.
at the end of the day, if you boil down my mission statement, is I want to make sure that every single time that someone is scared and needs to call a lawyer for help, that they can reach somebody and talk to somebody on the phone and not be like, crap, I got to hang up and call somebody else.
No, totally.
And
Yeah.
and for me, that means I get to help businesses be successful, and I get to help connect people with their attorneys. So that sounds corny, right? That might sound rehearsed. I haven't rehearsed anything in my life. I am the biggest winger of things. I'm
Didn't
the
sound
most
rehearsed to me.
unprepared. I'm
That sounded
so
good.
unprepared for everything that's ever happened to me, ever. You know,
But you're right. Like I think that's where you look. And I tell people all the time, like I don't try to divorce it from the money thing, but I tell people like, hey, if you make more money, that means I make more money. So everybody's happy. Like we're in this together.
it's like, you see my car, you know who bought it? You. That's one of my
Yes.
favorite quotes. You know who bought it?
Yes.
You did. So
I'm on vacation right now because of you
yeah,
in
thanks a lot. I appreciate
2023.
it. If you could,
Yes.
can you give me the elevator pitch about Red Cave Consulting?
Sure.
And what you can do to help attorneys and firms that are having a tough time right now, and not really guarantees, right? But sort
Yeah.
of give me the layout of like where you want to get struggling firms to go if they come to you for help.
Yeah. So, generally speaking, like what I try to do with law firms is kind of get a sense of where they're at presently. I think if I ignore that, that's a problem because then I don't know what kind of capacity they have currently. So I want to know like what are they using for technology? What are they doing in terms of marketing? What are they doing in terms of process management? What do their finances look like? Like all that stuff helps. I'm like a big data person, so I try to get that data dump right away, and that's also narrative that the law firms bring to me. And then what I always try to do is have law firms like I could talk to a law firm and pinpoint like 75 issues in the first phone call. We're not going to be able to resolve those all right away, probably ever, right? So what I try to do is break down a task list, right? I say, look, we've got these tasks in this category. Let's do like the first three and just start on that, right? And I'll try to decide like what's your most pressing issue? Do you need new technology? Do you need to market yourself differently? Do you need to manage your finances in a better way? Do you need to start doing revenue projections? Do you need to actually have goals? Is that where we start? And then when I bring somebody on, I'll usually set up like a Trello account for both of us. And then we'll just run through that task list. And I try to meet with the clients I have every couple weeks and try to push things forward because what I had done previously when I was working for people for the state, I would just be like, hey, we had a great meeting. I talked to them 4 years later and I'm like, what did you do? And they were like, nothing. So part of consulting is like being that nagging voice in the back of your head, or, hey, I got to talk to Jared in like 2 hours. I might as well do something, and it gets them moving forward bit by bit. And I think if people are willing to uh, hunker down and say, okay, I'm not going to solve everything right away. I'm going to take it piece by piece, but I'm going to manage each of those pieces very effectively. Those are the kind of people I like working with who have like a long-term vision and are willing to put the work in. So
When you were talking about like initially talking to a law firm,
Mhm.
I heard my doctor's voice in my head, and I'm thinking like, you know, a law firm that's not doing so well, right? I'm not going to say sick, but
Yeah.
would go to,
Yeah. No, it's
like
kind of,
someone like you, and in
yeah,
the same way I would
it's
go
a
to
good
a
analogy.
doctor and get diagnosed, right? Like this
Right.
is what you could be doing better. Not diagnosed, right?
Right.
Like your cholesterol's a
No,
little bit
no.
high.
View it as your physical, right?
Yeah, you're exact.
Your
It's like a physical.
virtual physical.
Exactly. Your law firm's physical.
Yeah.
Your blood pressure's a little high. Your cholesterol's a little high. This is doing really well. We're not going to do nothing about that.
Mhm.
You got to drop a few pounds here and there. And here's,
Right.
I'll see you again in a month. Here's what you should do about all that: is change your
Exactly.
diet, change this.
Yeah.
You go on a walk, walk the dog or something like that. And I'll see you again in a month. And
Yeah.
then maybe I go back and my blood pressure's good, and I lost 2 pounds. Well, my cholesterol is still high, and it's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You know what I mean? And that's the
Yeah.
same
It's a
thing
great
as like
analogy. Yeah.
your marketing might not be so good. So here's what you can do. You can write a bunch of great content, put it out there, put it on social media, do a video interview here, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Your intake is not so good. You know, people aren't really leaving their information. They're just like, hey, is he in? No. Sorry. Goodbye. And then they come back in a month and it's like, oh, I picked up a couple of new cases. I wrote these blog posts. I put them out there. Oh, but did you fix your intake? No. And I only caught one new client out of the 5 that oh, okay. So let's go over
Right.
the
And
new
then we
client
figure
intake.
that part out.
And I think it's so important to have somebody to sort of help you navigate those problems and sort of give you a roadmap of what you should do in order to get on the right path, you know?
Totally.
But listen, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I know it took me a long time. My face was really swollen, like I said before.
No, this is fun. I'm glad we could do this. I've
This was
had a
so much
blast.
fun. So here's what I'm going to do. For anybody watching this that wants to get in touch with Jared at Red Cave Consulting, the link to his website is going to be down below, as well as the Legal Toolkit podcast, and a bunch of other links to check out the rest of the stuff that Jared has to say. So Jared, I'm going to be emailing you for that after this.
And I will be emailing you back.
Awesome. I just want to say thank you a million for being on the show with us today.
This is a blast. I loved it.
I had a blast. So in the future, when we do, like redos, you'll be back. But everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is Everything Except the Law. I am your favorite mustached marketer, Nick Worker, and that was it.